I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, a return visit from a regular guest of ours. He's a former CIA officer. He's a bona fide whistleblower, a counterintelligence expert, computer analyst, expert of all kinds of data. He wrote this book about the deep state, the shadow government from the Company of Shadows, bestseller on Amazon. Gave it away. Kevin Shipp. Kevin Shipp has got a little bit of internet problems, but we're going to take him on a frozen shot. We just want to get him on. He has a lot to say about Mueller, about the Epstein case, about the economy, about what's going on globally. And I'll just go ahead and put him up right here. Kevin Shipp. Thank you for joining us today in an audio interview here on USAWatchdog.com for the early Sunday release.
Greg, as always, it's great to be with you.
I want to start with Mueller. He looks incompetent. I'm surprised somebody didn't ask if he had been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. He did terrible. We've been told for more than a year. By some of our sources, actually Dave Janda and actually Q, that Mueller was working with the president. He's incompetent. He couldn't have been working with the president. What's your assessment of the whole Mueller thing?
Well, he obviously was not working for the president, so I don't know who those sources are, but they may want to think about getting new sources. No, he was not working for the president. And it's pretty clear here for the first time, Mueller has testified before Congress 88 times with poise, with almost an arrogant demeanor. This is a different Robert Mueller I think, because the investigator is now being investigated and he's being put on the hot seat and finally realized that he was pushed into a corner essentially to make it clear that he did not write the report. It's my view that Andrew Weissman wrote it, and it's pretty clear a lot of the Mueller report comes right out of the fake Russian dossier. And what Weissman craftily did, many of the charges come from the dossier, and Weissman appointed attorneys that had read and pored over the dossier, but he did something pretty sly. In reference to the dossier and the false FISA warrants, he stuck those way down in the little footnotes, so he could claim it was in there but not have to talk about it in the Mueller hearing. Sadly for him, it was pretty clear. I think that Robert Mueller, this is the way, at least I've seen the government work. If you want to do a report and make it look credible, you find yourself a famous face and you put that person as being in charge when in reality, they don't do much of anything. I think Mueller was a figurehead appointed. I think Weissman did all the work, the research, and he's a rabid anti-Trump, pro-Hillary. Fully invested in the fake Russian dossier. And so they trot out Mueller as the Boy Scout, choir boy, honest guy in charge of the investigation and the report, which is not true. It's clear to me he did not write the report. And I'll give you an example. When the CIA was caught with Iran-Contra, breaking the law, both national and international, there was talk about dismantling the CIA. I was there. I was on the 7th floor in the CIA, in one of the agents with William Webster. And because the CIA was about to get taken apart by Congress, they hired none other but Judge William Webster, former FBI director, to head up the CIA, to put a nice face on what pretty much was a political pig. All Webster did was just show up for work. And literally the organization was run by Robert Gates, who did everything while Webster just put his face out in meetings. A pure figurehead. We all knew it. But it did. It saved the CIA from being dismantled, and it worked. Enter Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller in charge of the special counsel investigation, but it is clear to me that Andrew Weissman did about 90%, if not more, of the work and wrote the report himself.
What about the whole idea that Hannity was talking about this, and also even Senator Lindsey Graham talking about how people wanted me to subpoena Mueller, and he's not up for the job, and it's a sad day that he's mentally depreciated in some way. Is that an act, or do you think he really is mentally depreciated in some way?
Well, he didn't look mentally depreciated when he gave his press conference, did he? I think he was flat out scared. It didn't go the way he wanted. although the media made it look like William Barr ordered him to stick to the report, that's not true. What happened was Mueller sent Barr a letter saying, I'll only testify if you stick to the report and don't ask any other questions. Mueller did that. So he went in there thinking that, well, we'll just stick to the report and I'll just be safe and deny everything that could implicate me. Well, that backfired because we had some very astute representatives, Jim Jordan, for example, and Devin Nunes for another, that knew that was coming and literally just took him apart. And I think he was shocked at that. He's never been on the hot seat like that. No, I don't think he's got Alzheimer's. No, I don't think he's got problems.
Well, a lot of people have said that on when I had my weekly news wrap up. I was thinking that, the word was that he, it was too sad, that what they did to him was bad, that he's in a depreciated state, that Hannity said, I know he wasn't up for the task. Lindsey Graham saying the same thing. But you're saying that's covered. He's not depreciated. He's not missing a few ranks.
That's what I'm saying.
He's just shaken. He's just completely shaken.
He was completely shaken. And really to say, well, he didn't really know what he was saying, he's an old guy, he's got Alzheimer's, just literally covers up the real story, the fake Russian dossier, the soft coup against the president of the United States, which involved Andrew Weissman, and they put Mueller's face on that. So no, wouldn't it be nice to just make it look like Mueller was just kind of not mentally able to do the testimony? Therefore, all the damning things that came out don't really matter because Mueller's not quite there. Baloney.
And the idea that he was working for the president. If he wasn't, whether he could or whether he wasn't, it's clear he wasn't running the show. Whether he was depreciated or whether he wasn't depreciated, he just wasn't running the show. He was not working for Donald Trump.
He was not working for Donald Trump. I know.
Or working with him. That was the idea. And he's working with him. I said, come on. Working with him. He doesn't even know what's in the report.
He was not working with Donald Trump. He was working against him in a very dramatic fashion. So
by allowing his name to be used as a Republican with all these Democrats on this witch hunt.
That's correct. Exactly.
He was working. So total misinformation. Mueller working with the president. After he was interviewed for the FBI director's job. He was working with the president.
I don't know who that source is, but that source is completely incorrect.
What about now? It looks like we're kicking into high gear on investigating the investigators. What's your appraisal of that?
I think it's beautiful. Having co-located with FBI and FBI management in the counterespionage group, the FBI has been getting away with almost Gestapo-like tactics for decades. This is the first time, especially with Mueller, that he's been in the hot seat. And I think, thank God, we're actually seeing something constitutional happen in that the chief investigators of the FBI are now being held accountable, finally, after decades of misuse. So this is a good thing, despite the fact Gerald Nadler has come out again to make himself clearly a liar, a bold-faced liar. He knows it. People who follow what he said knows it. He brought this in to hope it would start impeachment. It blew back up in his face. I'm sure he had to get in the shower and scrub the egg off his mug because it looked so silly. Not only did it backfire, it ruined that particular position. So.
Well, but he's still saying that we're going for the impeachment.
Yeah,
that there's
still he is.
But you're saying that's a pipe dream.
That's a pipe dream. Yeah.
What about the bringing back the? I want to start with this because I brought it up. To bringing back the death penalty. I just think, and now we find out there are 5 candidates that William Barr has already brought forward after bringing back the death penalty, and they all involve. In some way, shape, or form, the murder of a child, or in one case, the murder of a 16-year-old virgin girl, a child, an underage person, mostly children. What do you make about the death penalty coming back? What's going on with that?
Well, it's about time. For these particular offenders, all people have to do is read the horrific things they did to these people, even little children. And those are cases, yes, for the death penalty. There's no question about that. And also now it makes child abusers the stakes really go up for them, which is also a good thing. So there's no question about it. When you read the cases that are up for the death penalty, that these people, that needs to happen based on the horrific. Animals don't even do what these people did. So I think it's an absolutely good thing, and it's another a tool in the box against pedophilia and pedophilia trafficking.
What about the Jeffrey Epstein thing? I mean, they found him in his cell. Some people say he tried to kill himself. Other people say that he got raped in prison and somebody tried to kill him and off him. What about the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing? Is this part and parcel to the deep state freaking out about a guy that could finger a lot of high-ranking people?
Oh, my goodness gracious. The deep state's darn well scared, and some of its political top participants are terrified. I guarantee you they want Epstein gone. There's no doubt about that. I don't know why the Bureau of Prisons, and they've got some serious problems. I don't know why they put Epstein in the jail cell with a cop who killed 4 people and buried them in his backyard. He should have been in solitary confinement under watch. So whoever made that decision, it was a complete error in judgment, if not intentional. So that shouldn't happen in the first place. And there are 3 theories. One, he tried to hang himself and commit suicide. It's leaning in that direction. The second was he was faking it to get transferred out of that cell possibility. And the third was that his big, bulky roommate, the murderer, he paid him or offered him $1 million to choke him down so he could try to get out of there. Those are the 3 theories. And the Bureau of Prisons says that's confidential. Prison investigations are not revealed to the public, so they're not telling us anything.
What do you think about the Epstein case in general? I mean, they've got stuff on his island. They've raided the island, supposedly. They've got a lot of people involved. They're subpoenaing the pilots of the Lolita Express. That's what they call it in the press, folks. The Lolita Express. They call the island either Pedophile Island or Orgy Island. And,
yes,
you know, I mean, all the people that have been down there, for example, it's a pretty well-known fact that former President Bill Clinton was on the manifest a couple of dozen times. What do you think's going on with this?
Well, it's serious because Bill Clinton said he'd only been on the plane 4 times. The logs show that he's been on the plane 26 times, and in 8 of those cases, he told his Secret Service to stay behind. That's called a smoking gun. I understand that Clinton is vacationing in the Dominican Republic, which was a big recipient of Clinton Foundation funds. Right now, he's in the Dominican Republic, enjoying some time with "quote unquote" friends. Bill Clinton is implicated all through this. But what really concerns me is Epstein's, it looks like, relatively clear connections to intelligence. You remember U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta stated he's the one that handled this case. He actually said that he had been told to back off, that Epstein was above his pay grade, and, quote, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and leave it alone." That is a shocking statement. So was Epstein connected to intelligence? In my view, yes, he was. Now, that statement was made to the Trump transition team when he was applying for labor secretary. And the Trump transition team accepted that as the reason he let a convicted pedophile go. And they appointed him as labor secretary. So that's where that statement came from. That is, as I mentioned, shocking that he said that. So it looks pretty clear to me that the deep state shadow government intelligence was involved. And it gets worse. Ghislaine Maxwell, who was his alleged recruiter for young girls, was the daughter of John Maxwell, who was a known Mossad agent who had built pension funds to cover the losses in his business. It is well known that he has connections to Mossad. As I said, he was under investigation for war crimes. And just after being put under investigation, he was found dead, naked, floating next to his yacht from an alleged heart attack. So there are some strange connections here to the deep state. And I guarantee you, the U.S. Attorney Acosta would not have said this if it wasn't true. So it is true. There are intelligence connections. Is this a blackmail operation by Mossad? We know Epstein has a black book. We know Epstein probably has videos of massages by young girls of high-profile people, including politicians. And Giuliani just came out and said there's going to be some high-profile people revealed in this. So there's going to be some big names that are going to be connected to Epstein and his pedophile child trafficking ring. No question about it. And his close friend and business associate, was Ehud Barak, former prime minister of Israel and Mossad leader. So there's another smoking gun in that regard. So I think that is behind this. I think there's blackmail information that Epstein had, and that's how he got off so easily with because of intelligence connections before, because he is indeed an intelligence asset, and he was collecting blackmail information. It looks like possibly Mossad. The question is, did the CIA know about it? Well, come on. This case was so clearly out in the open. They had to know about it. Now, I've seen them sometimes be Keystone cops, but in this case, if they had any sort of analysis or any officers on this case, it was abundantly clear that Epstein had tremendous connections with foreign leaders, including Prince Andrew and others who are implicated in this too. So it's got a very dark side to it. I hope that can be investigated and come out, but I know how the shadow government does things. They make things classified and seal them so nobody can see them. So let's just hope that President Trump pushes the investigation about his connections to intelligence.
Ehud Barak is an enemy of Netanyahu, correct?
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Could this be rogue elements of the Mossad, just like there are rogue elements in the CIA? I mean, you're a CIA whistleblower, and so you know people that are trying to do the patriotic thing in the CIA. Could this be the same thing where it's not the entire Mossad and it's a rogue element or a subset of the Mossad? I'm not trying to make an excuse for them, but it just seems like, wow, you got Ehud Barak, a friend of Jeffrey Epstein, who hates Bibi Netanyahu. Could this be a subset of their intelligence agency, or do you think they're all in? I don't know.
Yes, I think it certainly could, because an operation of this magnitude and this sensitivity would be kept, as the CIA does, just on the upper floor with the senior Mossad officers, and the lower level agents wouldn't know a thing about it. So I think that's certainly possible.
How many people could go down? I mean, how big could this get? I mean, could this destabilize the global economy? Could Donald Trump, in his human trafficking and corruption executive order, where he can block the assets, actually seize the assets, could they seize a ton of assets over this?
They certainly could. If it comes out that these people, high-level people, and people, several of them, I think, are in our own government, including Congress. But if it involves members, political figures in foreign governments, you better believe it. That's exactly what that can do.
So that not only can he jail them, but he could just take all their stuff.
You can, yes. That's the beauty of that executive order. That gives them the power to shut these people down financially, which is where you need to hit.
And I saw a story on InfoWars that they were saying that the media is complicit in covering up, and I think they are, because they didn't cover the Nexium trial. When they talk about Jeffrey Epstein, he's just one dude who likes a lot of young ladies, which it's sickening, but it's more than that. You just described that it's a blackmail scheme, or could be a blackmail scheme, where they got video and all kinds of things. Is the media? Do you think the media might be involved in the whole sex trafficking deal, or at least in some way covering it up by not covering it?
I absolutely do, and I think media elites were involved in using the services of Jeffrey Epstein. As a matter of fact, after he was released from his first so-called prison sentence, which it wasn't, he was allowed to go out, fly in his plane, work 12 hours in his office. After he was released from prison as a charged, convicted human trafficker and pedophile, he had a big dinner, and major media members attended that dinner. Katie Couric, for example, was there. Just after he'd been convicted, everybody knew it. There were media elites at this dinner celebrating his release. I would call that supporting him, certainly.
And what about how bad could this get? I mean, it's not only just Jeffrey Epstein, but then you throw in the other trying to knock out the president with Brennan and Clapper and the State Department and Kerry and Clinton and the White House and the National Security Advisor and the DOJ, the CIA, the FBI. I mean, do these stories start overlapping deep state stories? I mean, you wrote a book about the Company of Shadows. Is this all part of the Company of Shadows crimes?
I think it is. As I mentioned, to me, there's pretty clear connections to both U.S. and Israeli intelligence in this. And let me also mention, which is bizarre, that Jeffrey Epstein was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which has been largely staffed on its board by CIA directors. And he is also a member of the Trilateral Commission. This is Jeffrey Epstein, a businessman. We know the Council on Foreign Relations was instrumental in the creation of the CIA back with the dark director, Alan Dulles. So what the heck is he doing on the Council of Foreign Relations when he is an active and pretty well-known pedophile and trafficker of young women?
And you're saying that are you saying that the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission members all could be wrapped up in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking?
Some of them. I don't think all of them, but some of them could be, sure.
That would be devastating to them.
And there's big members of the mainstream media that are on the Council on Foreign Relations, for example. A couple of CNN members are on the Council on Foreign Relations, so they're tied directly into the mainstream media.
And what about the Moore Company of Shadows with, the takedown of President Trump? I mean, you had the CIA director, the head of the DIA, director of national intelligence, CIA. You have the director of the advisor to the president for national intelligence. You have the United Nations, Samantha Power, is that her name? Power?
Yes.
Unmasking people. You have the White House having a dinner party, according to Ed Klein, on December 16th, 2016. To unmask people and try to come up with a plan to take down Trump. You've got all these people. How bad do you think all these people are gonna get prosecuted?
There are indictments. I understand that Devin Nunes has sent these indictments over to the FBI. He couldn't say exactly the names, but it was pretty clear that one of them is James Clapper, another is John Brennan, another is James Comey. Referred to the FBI for indictment. Every single one of those people was involved in the attempted prevention of Donald Trump being elected and then spying on him after he was a duly elected president and attempting to remove him from office. So yes, there will be indictments coming, and I mean this, of these high-level people. If indictments do not come, they have made our Constitution a sham, and the justice system is a sham. And I think it's probably about time in that case that Americans break out in the street and start protesting the deep state and the shadow government. However, because of I have a lot of confidence in Devin Nunes and at this point, William Barr. So I think these people will be indicted, and others, Sally Yates and others who did the false FISA warrants will be indicted. Now, when that happens, it's going to shake Washington. It's going to open these positions up where they won't be filled, and they're going to have to nominate people to be in them. So it's going to be, well, it's already a constitutional crisis, but that would just amplify that.
Does Donald Trump have to win? Does he have to? A lot of people say, oh, he's not really going to do anything. He's part of the deep state. I think his family dies or is bankrupted or jailed like the Kennedys if he loses.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Am I crazy? Does he have to win?
He has to win. I think you're absolutely right.
Let me get in here with you. This is a fight to the death.
Yes,
this is not just you did bad, do bad. No. Prison time, death penalty, jail time. You're talking that this is going to be a fight to the death?
There's no question about it. They want Donald Trump gone any way that they can. And we know that the shadow government, including the CIA, and I've studied this in detail, were responsible for the assassination of JFK using the mafia. That's how far they will go. You're talking trillions of dollars they could lose if the president isn't in their pocket with the military-industrial complex, the deep state, and others. They want him gone. They want him dead if they can do it. He's under serious risk right now, and that's why it took a person like Donald Trump to be there, because other people would have cowered under all this pressure and all these threats. So he has got to push this forward, because if he goes back out after what I think is going to be a second term, they're going to be gunning for him.
The system may come down, and I think he's trying to stretch it out. Although the deep state would like to have the thing crash right here and now. I mean, he actually says that in his December 21st, 2017 executive order, where he has to protect against the people that have corruption and human trafficking from crashing the system. It's a national emergency.
Yeah.
Tell me about the national emergency about crashing the system. What do you think about that? And give me your thoughts.
The national emergency is the human trafficking cabals that are doing this are huge, basically corporations. They're making more money from human trafficking than they are from the drug trade. So
Wow.
this involves billions and billions of dollars and high level people in high places that are behind human trafficking. For that to come down means some big wigs are going to come down, some organizations are going to come down, as they should. And I can guarantee you that's one of the well-funded, powerful groups that wants to see Donald Trump gone.
Uh, what about this? What about the thing could be? I mean, they want to. He has to protect against them crashing the economy. He actually says it in his executive order,
Right.
that he wants to
Right.
protect against them crashing the economy. How could they do that? How could they crash the economy?
Well, they crash the economy because large amounts of money that are in the system go away.
Oh,
It's like a central bank crashing, and
got it.
they're so rich and powerful, and they've got these organizations that are engaged in finance in America. When those go down, all those finances dry up, and all the corporations and others that many of which are not aware what they're doing, they go down too.
People are upset that he's just signed this bill. He just put off any kind of budget problems, and I think it'll go through the Senate and the House. He'll sign it, of course he will. It's already been passed partially, so he's already put this off. It's a lot of money. It's trillions of hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in more spending, in more debt.
Yeah,
What
it
do you
is.
think he's doing? What do you think is the end game for him? Is he just going to try to keep this going until he gets out of office in 2025? Or is the rubber going to meet the road in 2021 when he's in his last term, and in early 2021, if he wins, he's going to reorganize the country and reorganize the debt? What do you think? I don't know. What do you think his plan is?
Well, it's just, in my opinion, he's drawing this out until he gets into his second term. And of course, the budget deal was not a good one. All it did is going to increase the deficit well above 22 trillion now. That's what this new budget deal will do. It'll raise the ceiling on the debt again, which is driving this country into a national security situation. Going back, started with the creation of the Federal Reserve, which began printing monopoly money and has no gold reserves, no reserves at all. It's not federal and it has no reserves, but they've been controlling our banking system, and the implementation of income tax all started in 1913, which is causing a spiral and the eventual financial catastrophe in the United States with the deficit we have right now. And other countries, unlike the U.S., have been stocking up gold. Russia, millions. China, millions, as they agree to stop recognizing the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency and go to the yuan and the ruble, which means they'll stop recognizing the U.S. dollar. The dollar will lose its value because of that. We have a huge debt. It is projected that by 2025, our deficit is going to be $30 trillion. It is impossible to pay that off. As a matter of fact, the global deficit is 245 trillion, an unimaginable amount of money. This thing's got to burst. It's going to burst. And people certainly need to know that. Because of the Federal Reserve, central banking, no gold reserves, it is going to have, in my view, serious consequences on our economy.
What do you think Trump's going to do after 2021? Do you think he's going to default? Do you think he's going to reorganize the debt?
Wow.
I mean, it's the pretending is ending, and I think we got till about 2021 if we don't have a major earthquake, or the USS Kitty Hawk doesn't get sunk in the Persian Gulf, and I don't want that to happen. I mean, if we don't have a ship sunk, or some missile strike, or some jet gets down, or some ship gets sunk, or some missile fire from North Korea or Iran or whatever, the second largest bank in China is now in trouble.
Yeah.
Deutsche Bank has been in perennial trouble, and its assets are being sucked. I mean, it just looks like any little pin could prick this bubble now.
I agree. Deutsche Bank is collapsing, and they own 45 trillion in derivatives, which are not money. It's digital, basically digital figures floating around out there with nothing to back them up. If Deutsche defaults, there goes 45 trillion of derivatives in our market, which would be serious, not to mention the other derivative markets. So that's serious to see that this is happening to Deutsche Bank. Very serious, and I think a lot of analysts are saying that. When Donald Trump gets into office the second term, and I'm a supporter of Donald Trump because he's the first president since JFK that's had the kahunas to come out against the deep state and against the shadow government in ways I could only dream of as a former CIA officer. So I'm a Trump supporter, but what he has got on his hands is a coming catastrophe. What's he going to do about that? Frankly, you cannot stop the collapse caused by the deficit. 22 and eventually 30 trillion. You cannot stop. That's going to burst. The 245 trillion deficit of the global economy is going to burst. There's nothing that Trump or anyone else can do to stop it. I think all he can do and probably will do is try to drag it out.
So you don't think he'll reorganize it? You won't say, hey, listen, we're going to default. We're going to go back to a gold standard, or we're going to get rid of the Fed. We're going to audit the Fed. A lot of people are wanting to Tulsi Gabbard and other people are, have always made these squawking noise about auditing the Fed. Ron Paul, and now Tulsi Gabbard, he's co-sponsoring a bill. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but so you don't think that Trump's gonna step in 2021 and either be forced to do something, or he'll force a what do you call it? He'll force a debt default or a reorganization, haircuts for everybody, things like that. They keep talking about this reset. The IMF, Christine Lagarde has talked about it. She's going to be the head of the European Central Bank.
Right.
We've heard about the reset. The reset of debt is what it is. So do you think that Donald Trump would just start defaulting on bonds? I mean, I find it hard to believe that he's going to be able to stretch this out to 2025. I'm finding it hard to believe he's going to be able to make it to, after the November election in 2020. But so, I mean, he's got to, I just find it hard to believe it. And I'm not arguing with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not arguing with you, but is he just going to, I mean, I don't know. What do you think the game plan is? If you can't stop it, then you're going to have people are going to take haircuts. He's going to move to save the country, isn't he, or what?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, Greg. If it was any other president, I would say he's not going to do anything about it. But we're talking Donald Trump here, who has no qualms about confronting the system. So with Donald Trump, I think it's certainly possible that he takes some significant action. He's a businessman. He understands this deficit that we've got and what it's going to do to the economy. So Donald Trump, I think, is an action man. He's a businessman. He understands money. If it was any other president, I'd say, nah, never going to happen. But Donald Trump, it's possible he could step in and stop this because it is probably the biggest national security issue. I think he could step in and make some changes, definitely.
The changes are going to have to be, I mean, it's going to have to be in reorganization. I mean, Jim Sinclair and Bill Holter say, listen, Donald Trump is a master of bankruptcy, and he is going to oversee the bankruptcy and reorganization of America. What do you say about that?
I say that's very possible based on his past track record in business and huge amounts of money. He's done this before a couple of times. And the way he looks when he brings his business acumen into government, it's certainly possible. And I think maybe just because it's Donald Trump, probable that he's going to do something to stop this.
Or something to stop the perpetual borrowing of money. And I mean, we're going to have to live within our means. This is going to be awful to a lot of people.
Well, let me just say this, Greg. Their standard of living is going to go down before the bubble bursts, the debt bubble bursts. Their standard of living is going to go down. They're not going to be able to afford what they used to. And this is all without considering inflation. If inflation happens, it's even worse. And people are not even talking about that, except for some experts. That makes this whole thing worse. So people better fasten their seatbelts, and they should prepare. I think 2021 to 2025, they should prepare to tighten their belt, get out of debt would be number one, and start realizing that this economy cannot go on further the way that it's been going with this amount of debt.
If he wants to rebuild, is part of rebuilding? I mean, you can't. People are like, oh, you should have honest markets. Well, if you got a bunch of dishonest people and you put them right back in there, doesn't he have to remove the dishonest people? Isn't what the Epstein thing is all about? I mean, they basically got him to fly over to Teterboro and give himself up. Jeffrey Epstein. They're going after a multitude of people, high up people. Some say it goes all the way up to the White House in Barack Obama.
I think so. I've done speeches before on Obama as a subversive president, and I absolutely think that's true. And it does go, and the soft coup does go directly to Barack Obama. And that's something that we all hope to see that investigation lead to that, because as Gerald Nadler, in between meals, has said, a president can be indicted after he's out of office. So Barack Obama can be indicted. There's no question about it. What politicians have done is they've been stealing more than $100 million every single hour of every single day from future generations of Americans, with the deficit, and they continue to raise the debt ceiling. That's what they're doing. That's what they're doing to Americans. That's what they're doing to us. It's serious. It's unethical. It's run by the elite who don't care what happens to Americans. They just care about their power. It's a moral crisis. And these are not just elected officials. They're in Congress, but we've got the technocrats and the deep state, what I call the secret intelligence industrial complex, which is as huge and functions in billions of dollars behind the scenes, like the military industrial complex. Not just elected, it's unelected officials in the intelligence agencies and their contractors like Lockheed Martin. So we've got these technocrats in the deep state. There are overlords now that we're seeing in Google, in Facebook, in Twitter, which has been messing with me lately, both Facebook and Twitter. They've been taking down some of my things, and that's why we've gone to the website with some of this, based on your wonderful advice, Greg. And you give me a lot of good advice on.
I just want to see you succeed, man. I like bringing the diamonds out. Go ahead.
Well, you're the real thing. That's why I come on with you. You're an actual investigative journalist, and you've got quite a track record of doing that, even for some of the major media outlets in the past. And that's why I like to come on with you, because you deal with facts. So I appreciate that. So the question is, who's going to bail out the central banks? Because eventually they're going down because of this. Who's going to bail them out? That's not even on the table with most discussions about this. The central banks, all of this is going into the central banks are controlling everything. The central banks, even foreign banks, control the Federal Reserve. They control our interest rates. They're saying they're going to cut them again. I think they're afraid of what's coming also. But when the central banks fail, who's going to bail them out? There's nobody left.
I think it's gold.
It has to be gold. You know, the American government has been so foolish in abandoning the gold standard and not buying billions of dollars worth of gold like Russia and China. That's the stupidest thing our government could possibly do, because it could lead to the complete collapse of the U.S. economy. Will they be held responsible? No, they'll sit up in their secret CEO offices, swirling scotch and building their bunkers, as some of them are. And it's not going to affect them, so they don't care. But it is going to affect Americans, and it's a moral outrage. These elite, as we know, are not just bilking people to the tune of billions of dollars, but several of them are pedophiles and are actually engaged in this trafficking, like their original mentor, Cecil Rhodes, who originated the Rhodes Scholar program from Cecil Rhodes. He was a pedophile. He had a group of 5 young boys that traveled with him everywhere he went, and he called them his little angels. And he was a big proponent of the New World Order. So these elites, many of them, are involved in disgusting things, and they're just in for protecting themselves, and I'm not saying all elites, but I'm saying several, protecting some of the perverted things that they do. Hollywood elites, many of them are involved in Satanism. That's clear as a bell. So we've got some dark people at the top of these economic connections, and many of them are in the central banks. So they don't care if the banks fail as long as they're protected. So I hate to say it, but there's going to be a burst caused by our deficit. And as I mentioned, that could hit $30 trillion by 2025.
Do you think Donald Trump can? I mean, these people that are involved in this takedown of Donald Trump as the candidate in his transition team and the president, the duly elected president. Do you think these people corruption? Certainly, that's corruption. Do you think all these people's assets are up for grabs for corruption? Not just pedophilia. That's the other side, the pedophilia. In other words, you've got a bunch of people involved in corruption, a bunch of people involved in pedophilia. Do you think his plan is just to take the assets of a lot of people and pad the crash for Americans?
Yes, I do.
Explain.
Well, there's talk about Jeffrey Epstein's assets going to the government. They seized I think it was $15 million, I think it was, of assets from El Chapo, and they're thinking of using that to build the wall. So if these people are indicted,
15 billion. It's 15 billion, right?
I don't remember the exact figure.
It's a lot. Well, the Supreme Court said the president can use extra money to
Yeah.
build. He can designate money to go build the wall.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court just ruled on that.
And like Jeffrey Epstein, if they're indicted and charged, and the government can seize their big mansions, their underground bunkers, and the other things that they have, their bank accounts and everything else, the government can seize those things and take them from the big wigs, the people of power that up until now have been unchallenged. And like Jeffrey Epstein, they can wind up in a small jail cell.
So you're saying that part of the plan very well could be a massive seizure of assets by the elite, either for corruption or this pedophilia, human trafficking, that kind of massive seizure of assets. Talk about that.
Yes, I do. And I think when Trump signed that executive order for human trafficking, and not just the actual perpetrators, of which he's busted thousands, but talking about the global corporate entities that actually are engaged in this human trafficking and are making, as I mentioned, more than the drug trade. That executive order that he signed was focused on their financial interest, meaning being seized and shut down. So just the fact that he signed that executive order, and it's very important in the wording in that, he called it a national security emergency. What that means is the military can become involved, and other parts of the government that wouldn't otherwise be involved can come in there because it's a national security issue, and that involves other agencies in the government. That's huge. So yes, they could indict these people and they could seize their assets.
I'm taking a note, sorry. So are you heartened by what is happening with Bill Barr and Durham and Horowitz? Horowitz hasn't produced his report yet, but they got rid of, that's just yet another terrible data point that we got that Huber's working on, the prosecutor Huber from Utah. He's working on it. He's not a single indictment, not a single grand jury.
He didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. Are you heartened by what you're saying? Do you think this could really come to? Are people ready for this? Are people ready for mass arrests of high elite people and mass confiscation of their assets? I mean, that's what you're saying, right? Mass arrests and mass confiscation of trillions of dollars in assets?
Yes. And to answer your question, people are not ready. Most people aren't even following this news. No, they're not ready. They're not ready at all.
Discuss that. What would that look like? Mass arrest and mass confiscation of assets.
Well, confiscation of assets, got to remember those assets are connected to other financial interests of Americans that don't really know what's behind the elites at the top of these organizations and the central banks. So you're going to have huge corporations, companies that are involved in corruption, specifically in human trafficking based on the executive order by Donald Trump. When those come down, you're talking about trillions of dollars of revenue coming down, investments coming down, stocks that they have bought coming down. And much of this is connected to the U.S. economy, and some of it is connected to the jobs that people have, having no idea who is at the top running the show. Huge. It would be a huge catastrophe. And based on what I have seen in my study, Americans are not aware of what's coming. And that's one of the things, of course, you and I are trying to do is warn them. This is coming. Start getting ready. You may have a couple of years left to do it. Most people don't even know this is going on, and therefore none of them are prepared.
Could it also be a huge windfall of assets, property, stocks, bonds, money, whatever? Could it also be a huge windfall?
Well, it'll be a huge financial windfall in these seized properties and the bank accounts for the federal government. And, Trump being a financial strategist, just seeing how he strategizes financially, I could see this as part of his strategy.
The seizing of assets.
Yes.
The padding of the U.S. economy, the paying off of debt. You're saying that this is that the seizure on a grand scale is part of the strategy.
Yes. So why not use it to bring down the deficit? It'd be brilliant because it's a national security issue. And yes, just knowing Trump and his background and the things he's been doing, yes, I could see him doing that.
Does he have to win? If he doesn't win, does his family die?
He has to win for two reasons. He has to win because our constitutional form of government is at stake. Our traditional values on which the Constitution is founded is under serious attack. He has to win for that sake, and he has to win also because if he goes back into private industry, he has a serious threat of assassination, not just him, but his family. Now, he's smart. He's got a huge layer of security around him, first private, then the Secret Service, which is smart. But he'll never be safe again, sadly. He's got to protect himself.
So if he's got to take down as many of these guys as possible, I mean, that is a no-brainer. That's going to happen. It has to happen.
Has to happen, yes.
Wow. That's we're talking about a few years of a shootout at the OK Corral all over the world.
That's right.
This is going to get ugly.
It's going to get very ugly.
So he's got to take these guys to the mat, put them in jail, use the death penalty, confiscate their assets, destroy their businesses. Oh, man.
You bet. You bet.
That all has to happen.
It has to happen. It's the way that you deal with a drug cartel. You'd arrest them, you'd put them in jail, then you'd seize their millions of dollars of assets, which becomes the property of the U.S. government to use where it will. And I hope that would be reducing the national budget deficit.
Wow! And how big do you think the seizure could end up being? How many assets? What's your thumbnail idea of what's the amount of cash and prizes that he could seize?
Well, that's difficult to predict, but we know that human trafficking alone is up there in the billions and billions of dollars, and I think the entire corrupt system there is in the trillions. So now remember that it takes time to investigate these people, eventually arrest them when you have enough evidence. I don't think this is all going to happen at once. I think it's going to be incremental. One corrupt company after another. So it's going to stretch out a little bit. It's not going to happen all at once. And from a national security perspective, Trump knows how that will cause the stock market to dive. It'll cause unemployment to rise if it's all done at once. So I don't think it's going to be done at once. It's going to be done, but I think incrementally.
Is this why the Democrats are fighting so hard? They know they're in there. I mean, there are Republicans involved in this, okay?
Yeah.
There are Rhino Republicans involved, but the Democrats had the power for the last 8 years, so they're in probably the deepest. Is this why Jerry Nadler is pushing the stupid impeachment thing, and Nancy Pelosi, and even though it's stupid, and they're gone this far left AOC, communists. They're Marxists and communists. I mean, that's what they are.
Yeah, they're
and that's what they. And listen, that is not a stretch either.
No. I mean, they come right out and say
anti-American, hate Americans, support the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, Ilhan Omar is like where she is from is the biggest recruiting area of Muslim terrorists in the country.
She is a cultural jihadist. Omar is a cultural jihadist. Their cultural goal is to get in positions of power in the U.S. government with the intent of bringing it down.
And do you think that this is why the Democrats are unhinged? They are unhinged. I mean, the people in Hollywood are unhinged. Do you think they're involved in the pedophilia trade too?
I absolutely do. They're unhinged because they've got a lot to hide, and some of them are terrified that they're going to come under investigation. Nadler has lied repeatedly. Why? Schiff has lied repeatedly. Why? Schumer has directly lied repeatedly. Why? They're trying to take Trump to impeachment when there's no evidence, and especially after Mueller's testimony. Why are they so desperate to get rid of this president and the investigations and the exposés that he's doing? It's because they're complicit.
Wow, that's a big statement. I want to get back into an email that I got, and I'll just read it to you. I was looped into this email, and it was from Bill Binney, former NSA, and he's talking about the hammer, which you have brought out in very detailed fashion that it's a hoax. You've even got Mike Zullo on record saying the hammer, the alternative platform, supposedly put together by one guy, Dennis Montgomery. Total hoax. He couldn't have done it. He didn't do it.
Well, and Dennis
You know what?
Montgomery, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And this has been going on since 2015. Here's the email that I got. It's Bill Binney. I think he's talking to you in the group. It's Wiebe, McInerney, Janda, Fanning, Goodman, Greg Hunter, and Sue Shipp, which is your wife. I'm sorry,
That's
it's
my
you.
wife. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, think we should leave this to the professionals. I have referred this to members of the DOJ investigative team and will be meeting with them soon. Therefore, I don't think we should be discussing it further. I saw this and said, what? This is the hoax you've been pushing for 4 years, and you need now an investigation? Clue me in. What's going on here?
Well, if people, I went out there and did a agonizing hour, a little over an hour YouTube presenting all the real evidence on the hammer. Dennis Montgomery is a fraud. Bill Binney, Kirk Wiebe, and Thomas Drake under subpoena as experts wrote a memo saying Montgomery was a fraud and his hammer 47 hard drives were fake. That's on the record. You'll see that in my investigation. So, as we always say,
wait. And a new player, which we didn't talk about, was Mike Zullo, the lead investigator for Joe Arpaio, the sheriff in Maricopa County. He was the lead investigator on the story in question with this guy, right? What does he say?
Yes, as a matter of fact, he's given me permission now to reveal that he was my source in the new information that I have on the YouTube video, and he and I have been in contact. He was a direct witness. He interviewed Montgomery at length. He looked at the information on the 47 hard drives and agreed that it was false. He agreed that Dennis Montgomery should not be trusted, should not be talked to ever. Because
so he did not invent a alternate spy platform that's equal to the NSA.
No, because it would take a huge group of people just to run the thing. One man can't develop that, and one man can't run a system of that magnitude. It's not possible.
What about this thing where he's turning it over to the FBI and DOJ? What? I mean, excuse me. You've talked about you and Binney and Wiebe and Janda, Mary Fanning, whoever these players. You've talked about this since 2015, and now you need more investigation.
Well, I can tell you.
What does that mean? What
I can tell you what that's all about. When Bill Binney sent me that note, I laughed. My wife was sitting right there. What they're doing, it's a strategy. We've turned it over to the DOJ, and Bill Binney actually came out and said this. Therefore, we can't talk about it anymore. Boy, this is the oldest trick in the book. If you want to cover up information, well, it's under investigation. CI does this all the time. It's under investigation. We can't really talk about the criminal activity that has occurred here. So turning it over to the DOJ, and it's interesting that Bill Binney made that email public to people that he doesn't have contact with. Including Jason Goodman is on there. A bunch of people are on there because it's I wouldn't call it a threat. I'd call it a deception. We just want to let you all know that we're not going to talk about the false information that we put out because now it's under investigation. So we're not going to try to justify evidence that's flimsy. That's what's happening.
Well, I mean, the whole thing's a hoax. I mean,
yes,
it's a hoax.
Yes, and it is a hoax. And
why?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. But if the whole thing's a hoax, you say it is a hoax. Go ahead.
Why the things that they're avoiding that I point out in my video, they will not address any of the evidence I present, which is solid. I've got documents, emails. Montgomery sent me a bunch of stuff, not realizing that I was on to him. So I've got the same stuff from Montgomery that they have. And as I tried to advise Dave Janda, there's red flags all over it. Instead of updating the information, he went after me well, he's still going after me. He's still out there saying, because I have viewers that contact me, watch Janda's videos. He's still accusing me of saying there's no parallel programs. And therefore, I don't know what I'm talking about. I never said, and this is in my setting the record straight video, I never said there were no parallel programs, but that's all he has to try to counter the evidence that I put out there for the world to see.
You did say Dennis Montgomery didn't build a Operation Hammer.
Yeah, that's a great question and an important question.
I mean, that's what you said, that this is a hoax. This is the thing that they've gone on for 4 years is a total hoax. He didn't do it. He couldn't do it. It's the evidence says it's a hoax. Mike Zullo, the lead investigator, is a hoax. What's his name? NSA people, Thomas Drake, Even Kirk, I think Bill Binney or Kirk Wiebe also said, "Oh yeah, there's no classified information. There's no program. There's no special program." It all comes back to abuse of the NSA, doesn't it? I mean, that's the story, right?
That's the story. That's the story. Why is Bill Binney, Kirk Wiebe, and Dave Janda? Well, I think Dave is just trying to placate his viewers, and Mary Fanning, I think, just didn't dig deep enough. You don't keep pushing a story that's full of holes. You fix it. But anyway, why are they concealing the fact or not addressing the fact that there were some thumb drives that Mike Zullo, the chief investigator, had, and not on the 47 hard drives, those were false, but on these thumb drives, there was NSA top secret information, specifically thin thread information that was developed within the CIA, and Trailblazer information, which was the illegal spying program that Michael Hayden instituted. So where's Michael Hayden in all of this? Where's Michael Hayden as the person behind this? Because I don't think there's much question that Montgomery was getting data or hacking data from the NSA. It appears he was giving it directly by Michael Hayden after Congress told Hayden to shut the whole system down. Why are they not talking about it? Why are they not talking about these thumb drives? I think some of the information they saw was actually thin thread information. Why are they not talking about that? Why have they not been talking about that since 2015? I think they tried to supersede Sharon Rondeau's article, which is excellent, by the way. They're not talking about this, and this is the important stuff. They pushed this shallow investigation that was done that's full of holes, and instead they attack me for bringing out additional evidence.
Does this no, it's evidence that says that Dennis Montgomery's propelled a hoax. They propelled a hoax. There's no platform. So are they doing this to cover up the NSA abuse? Is that what's the point of them doing this and propelling this hoax? Why?
Oh, Greg, that's the huge question, and I've given this a lot of thought. And the only conclusion I reach is that they are aware of some of this NSA information on these thumb drives, and for some reason they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to talk about Michael Hayden. What that reason is, only they know, but they're certainly concealing information that they're aware of that was on these thumb drives, because some of them actually looked at it on Zullo's computer. So why are they pushing a hoax, or at best a very shallow story, and not talking about this? I think that's the big question.
Have you talked to the FBI? I mean, he says he's turned this over to the FBI. You used to do counterintelligence. That's what you tell me, and you work with the FBI. Have you also contacted the FBI? And if you have, what did you tell them?
Yeah, I did investigations with the FBI. As a matter of fact, when I was in the counterespionage group, my boss was an FBI SAC, supervisory agent in charge. It was an FBI SAC. I won't mention his name, but I worked for the FBI conducting counterintelligence information at the agent level. They were awesome. At the supervisor level, they were terrible, close to criminal in some cases.
So what did you tell them about this? What Bill Binney says, I'm turning it over, the Operation Hammer, I'm turning it over to the FBI and DOJ. What did you tell the FBI?
Well, I reported it to the FBI too, and you see me still talking about it, but I reported to the FBI these thumb drives and what potentially was on these thumb drives, and the FBI needs to look into that. And they also, before they talk to Dennis Montgomery, which I hope they do, they have to realize that he is a brilliant con man before they talk to him. He has conned everybody. He's conned he conned the CIA, he conned the FBI, he conned the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, who now are upset that they let him do that, according to Mike Zullo. So he's a brilliant con man. Now he's, in my opinion, he's conning the media. I think he's conning Mary Fanning. I think he's conning some other reporters that have brought this up and trying to make himself look like. So he's still manipulating certain sectors of the news media.
But you told the FBI what? You told them what? You said, hey, listen, Bill Binney is telling you about this Operation Hammer. Here's what you should look at. Is that what you called? What did you tell them?
No, I didn't mention Bill Binney or Janda or anyone else in that, because
you just said what?
It's just evidentiary. I said, you need to look into the Dennis Montgomery case and the so-called Hammer. The 47 hard drives that he claimed was the Hammer are fake, but you need to look into these thumb drives because it appears that there's thin thread and Trailblazer information on them.
We're right back to NSA abuse, which
Yes.
happened with variety of people, foreign, domestic, multiple agencies, multiple people, the United Nations, and now here yet another example of NSA abuse. Why build a
Yes.
super duper system if you could just abuse the super duper system we already have? Is that what this is?
Well, yeah, which they do, and of course, the only thing they have, as I mentioned earlier, to try to attack me with is I don't believe in parallel platforms. Now, they don't mention what parallel platforms they're talking about because I proved that Dennis Montgomery's was a sham. So Jan is still
I
going
mean,
out.
that was the story. Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa. The story was never parallel platforms. That came up after you
No,
said it was a
no,
hoax.
no, it was
You
never
said that this is a hoax, what Dennis Montgomery did, and then they
right.
came up with this parallel platform thing. Well, and it all comes down to it's just more cover up of or potential cover up of NSA abuse is what you're saying. Is that right?
That's correct. And why keep harping on this parallel program and not the actual facts and trying to get me for which I never said there wasn't any parallel programs. I was the recipient of one of those parallel programs when they bugged and tapped me and my family on the base I talk about in my book. So I'm not saying they don't exist, but they keep saying that because that apparently in their minds is the only defense they have against the investigation I did.
And you're doing a Patreon, you're doing a roundtable. Who's going to
Yes.
be on it? When is it going to happen?
August the 1st, we're going to do a roundtable. We don't want to say the exact location yet. It's going to be in Virginia. Jason Goodman and myself will be there personally, and then we'll have Mike Zullo on Skype on
Wow.
the big screen, and Sharon Rondeau also, which is awesome. She's going to be at that roundtable too. And what we're going to do, we're not going to attack any persons. We're going to all bring out what looks like are the hard facts in this case, and we're going to put it on YouTube so that everybody can see it.
It's going to reveal basically more NSA abuse,
Yes.
illegal abuse.
And the possibility, a very good possibility, that General Michael Hayden, after being ordered by Congress to shut the Trailblazer program down, there's indication that Michael Hayden sent some of that information to Dennis Montgomery, which is on the thumb drives, and you don't hear any mention of General Michael Hayden anymore, but some of the stuff on these hard drives, some of the stuff on these thumb drives, the ones that they're ignoring, the information on these thumb drives indicates that NSA information, Trailblazer, from Michael Hayden's illegal domestic spying program, some of it is on these thumb drives, which means that General Michael Hayden was in direct contact with Dennis Montgomery and trying to feed him information on a program which had been deemed illegal by Congress.
Why would people try to cover that up?
I
Why
don't
wouldn't
know.
you just come out and say, yeah, it was hoax, sorry. Yeah, we got
I
misled.
don't know.
You know?
I don't know.
Is
Yeah.
this more of the culture of corruption? Let's get back to the bigger picture now. This is just more of the culture of corruption, spying, reckless abandon for anything law, rule of law, whether it's financial, whether it's government, whether it's espionage, whether it's child trafficking. Is this just more of the breakdown in the rule of law in our society at the highest levels?
It absolutely is. This is corruption at the highest levels of our government that is manipulating our government, and the corruption is deep. It's huge. It's like a network, a net of connected corrupt companies and people, and you get into the military-industrial complex and Lockheed and all these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are doing the same thing. And our America has declined and it's slid. There is so much corruption. And personally, it makes me sick to my stomach.
Is Donald Trump going to try to knock out a lot of this corruption
Yes, I think he is. Yeah.
and confiscate? So the roadmap is start making legal cases, and you name your targets for the corruption, prosecute them, use all the tools necessary, including the threat of the death penalty, confiscate confiscate assets, and try to use those huge confiscated assets to kind of put a pad under the evil that's coming our way. Is that a good summation? I don't know. You tell me.
No, I think that's a good summation, and I think it's Donald Trump alone only that's doing it, not his advisors, because they've all cowered to the shadow government deep state up until this point. So this is a Donald Trump thing. And this is one of the things I'm convinced that he's going to do, and probably against the advice of some of his co-opted advisors that are still members of the deep state. So this is Donald Trump doing this. This is Donald Trump going to do this. And this is why I've become a supporter, because he is directly confronting this corruption, the deep state and the shadow government. No president has ever had the guts to do that, and there's a price in the fact that he's under jeopardy, and his family, physically and financially. He's a target. So the corruption is huge. It's at the top, and I just want to stress the point that this is Donald Trump doing this. It's not his advisors. It's not the people that surround him from the deep state. He's the only one that's pushing this because there's such a huge risk, and I think he's doing it. But remember, you got to do these things methodically and step by step. For example, using Barr, you got to collect the information so that it's strong enough. It's pretty easy to indict somebody, but it's strong enough both to indict them and then charge them for a crime before you do it. And that takes time. And also, you don't want to do it all at once, because then you have a huge financial crisis on your hands. So, yes, I do think Donald Trump is going to confront this corruption. This corruption is deadly. This corruption is evil. This corruption is at the top of the elite, and that's what Donald Trump is up against.
If he loses, does his family die?
If he loses the election, they are going to come after him as long as it takes, he and his family.
If he loses the battle with the corruption, so he's got to win the second term.
He has.
I mean, this election is huge. If he loses, his family dies.
I think
if he wins, he can likely work himself into a position where he can knock out his enemies.
Yes, I think that is absolutely true. And he knows that his life is at stake, his family's life is at stake, and if he loses, they're going to go after him, and they're going to try to assassinate, whatever term you want to use, not just him, but the members of his family that they view as enemies to their system.
Wow. You wouldn't want another Trump in the White House, just like you wouldn't want another Kennedy, John. You wouldn't want another Kennedy in the White House now, would you?
Well, I'll tell you.
Or Robert Kennedy. He wouldn't have. They wouldn't have fared well with him in the White House.
Well, look what happened to them. I've done a couple of shows on that. There's direct evidence that evidence was concealed. The bullet holes were removed in the case of Bobby Kennedy. The bullet hole.
Sirhan.
And Robert Kennedy was supposedly assassinated by Sirhan, but there were bullet holes going the other direction in the doorframe that the LAPD, who's trained by the CIA, by the way, and you can actually Google that one, but the LAPD removed those bullet holes, which disproved the lone gunman theory, took them out and burned them. So I've said this in many interviews that the CIA and the mafia, without a question, were connected directly to the assassination of JFK and to the assassination of Robert Kennedy. And if you look at some of the effects in JFK Jr., they wanted these people dead, and they succeeded. And that's what Donald Trump is facing right now.
And he knows this. He knows this is a death dance.
He knows it. Yep.
And people in the CIA, you still have a lot of contacts in the CIA, and actually a lot of contacts that are friendly to you.
Well, I got a lot of good friends in the CIA, some of which are saying, "Go, man, go."
That's great. Do they share your view about how rough this is going to be to get to the other side, financially, geopolitically, and also society-wise? How rough it's going to be. Do they share your views? And what are your views, and do they share it?
Well, the friends that I have in there share my views, but in large part at the journeyman level, the population in there is just concerned about their promotion, providing for their family, getting their next grade so they can get more income. That's all they think about. And I can tell you, having worked there at many levels, that's all they think about is working to get their next promotion. Period. There's no one in there. There's some people that made some big statements. I hope you get him, Kevin. And then they did nothing. They hid away, got their retirement, and disappeared. So I have friends in there that, yes, agree that this is a crisis. Many of them like Trump, although the CIA tends to be liberal overall, and it's been virtually destroyed by multicultural diversity, which has put people in positions of supervision that have no expertise or background in that whatsoever. And it's gotten worse from what I understand of one of my friends. So There's good people at the lower levels of the CIA. In the Where I worked in the avenues, they only care about, as I mentioned, their next promotion, providing for their family, and getting up to the GS 14, 15 or higher level is all that's on their mind. That's all they do. And they really don't care about anything else. If they were to stand up against this stuff, they destroy their career. So they keep their mouth shut.
So, I mean, how bad do you think it's going to get is what my question is. So how bad do you think it's going to get? What's your future cast scenario of how bad this is going to get to fix this and get to the other side?
Well, to fix this, as you and I talked about earlier, Donald Trump is going to have to do something about this 22 trillion and climbing deficit. He has to. He must. If he doesn't, goodbye, America. That's the first thing. And when this happens, when this bubble bursts, or God forbid, inflation hits, Americans are going to be caught with their britches down, many of them, because they're not ready for this. It's going to be a serious financial catastrophe, which is going to result, without a doubt, in violence in the streets. That's one thing. Now, the corruption, which is sickening, he's aware of that. He's even, especially that executive order that he passed regarding human trafficking, he is going after these corrupt entities. Now, with the Epstein arrest, he's got a big-time avenue to do that with some high players. Specifically at the top of that list is William Jefferson Clinton. There's no question about that. Some of these people...
Wait, you think they're going to take down former President Bill Clinton?
Yeah, I do. The evidence is there. He's lied 4 times. He was on the plane 26 times, 8 times without his Secret Service, and he's lied about it 4 times. Why would he do that?
Do you think they'll charge him and jail him?
I think so, yeah.
Do you think he'll roll over on Hillary?
Wouldn't that be nice? It's possible. They know how to do it. You know, I was an interrogator. They know how to get people to roll over. And with Bill Clinton, who essentially has no character, that's a certain possibility.
Wow. Who else do you think they might nab?
Well, let's see. They're going to nab Clinton. I think
give me your quick list of big-time players that are in the crosshairs that you see right now in the crosshairs.
Well, Alan Dershowitz is in a lot of trouble. He's coming out and making statements that don't make any sense. Oh, yeah, he got a massage, but he had his underwear on. And one of the biggest ones is Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, who was photographed going into Epstein's multi-million-dollar mansion in New York there, a house in New York there, just after a bunch of underage girls went in. Ehud Barak goes in with his head wrapped with a scarf, just his eyes showing. He goes into Epstein's mansion. So we're talking people at that level.
Who else could go down for not just the Epstein thing, but it's just a whole cornucopia? The failed coup, the witch hunt, the try to take down the president, the corruption, the human trafficking. Give me a list of people that you think could all go down.
Well, we'll start with John Brennan, who I think is clearly going to be indicted for the soft coup against the president. He was at the center of that whole thing, including disseminating as intelligence the dossier. I think he's going to be one of the first ones. Secondly, Clapper's going to be indicted because he was a part of that. He leaked to the media. He lied about it. He lied about the dossier. Now, that dossier was a coup. That dossier was an attempt to unseat the president of the United States. That's serious, extremely serious. And then you got James Comey, who would be the FBI thug, dirty cop in the midst of this, who let Hillary Clinton walk when she clearly had violated multiple felonies under Title 18 U.S.C., including espionage. He let her walk. He leaked a memo to his buddy, which helped appoint his friend Robert Mueller as the special counsel, and he's been dirty and in the midst of this the entire time. Then you got the false FICE affidavit people. You got Sally H., you got Dana Bonte, and others who signed up on these false FICEs. They're all going to be under scrutiny. So you look, these people are in top positions in our government, and if they're indicted,
Rosenstein, you think he's in trouble?
No, I don't. I think he's cooperating. Remember that mysterious plane ride he took with Trump on Air Force One?
Yeah.
I think they cut a deal. And if you'll notice, Rosenstein came out after that as a supporter of Trump. So I think, I think Trump made a deal with him. And no, I don't think Rosenstein is going to jail.
Strzok, Page, Susan Rice, people like that. President Obama.
Strzok and Page, yes, they're going to be indicted. Susan Rice, very possibly, and I think very probably because she made this big spreadsheet of complex spreadsheet of unmasked names. So yeah, now ultimately, this soft coup, the 702 spying by the NSA, the planning of covert agents in the Trump campaign, the setup of George Papadopoulos, all of those are criminal offenses, and they all lead to Barack Hussein Obama. I was on the 7th floor of the CIA, and daily we would take what's called the Presidential Daily Brief, or the PDB, which has all of the high-level sensitive CIA and NSA programs. It's brought, I was there, witnessed it, it's brought to the president every single day for him to read, to find out. Now, this was a huge operation involving the CIA and the NSA, and supported by Barack Obama, who is behind the abuses of the NSA 702s and unmasking of Americans. This leads all the way to Barack Obama, and doggone it, we as Americans have got to press that. We have got to see that man held accountable, because ultimately he was overseeing this entire operation.
My goodness. I mean, you're talking about the White House, his staff, you're talking about National Security Advisor, the NSA, the CIA, the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, not Defense, I'm sorry, the Clapper's National Intelligence Director.
DNI, yeah.
Yeah, DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. You're talking about the State Department. We're talking about Presidents Clinton and Obama, who's involved in this whole Epstein thing. You're talking about former Secretaries of State. John Kerry's implicated.
Yes,
he's been over talking to Iran. Hillary Clinton, of course, with her private server that was unprotected. I mean, multiple peoples at the Department of Justice, at the FBI. It's just mind-boggling.
Well, and the State
we're talking dozens of people.
Yes, and the State
Department, dozens. Go ahead.
The State Department, including John Kerry, had met with Christopher Steele and were aware of and supporting the dossier. A lot of people don't know that. So he's kind of under the scope too. So you've got this is the shadow government in full view, being held accountable. Something I have dreamed about since 2012, when it wasn't so cool to talk about the deep state. This is Donald Trump directly exposing the shadow government, Trump and others, exposing the shadow government and these high-level corrupt criminal players that have been there for years, most of them appointed by Bill Clinton himself and his corrupt network connected into the criminal Clinton Foundation, and on it goes. These are people in the highest levels of government, just like Giuliani said. These are going to be prominent people. This is going to happen, and it's going to shake things up. But you know what? Things have to be shaken up. It is about time they're shaken up.
Is it the only way to save the country?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, if we don't do it, we lose the country.
That's
correct.
The
country's going to be imploded by the criminality of these weasels. And then they'll be cutting deals with, foreign powers just to save their bacon. Maybe they might get a nice little mansion to be in, and they could be a little mouthpiece to tell everybody it's okay and why they need to, why they need to step in line and let the Chinese or the Russians or whoever take over. You'll be better off for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the only person standing in the way of that right now is not just Donald Trump, but it's the 63 million Americans and climbing that voted for him. People are mad. They're upset. They're being quiet right now. They're not putting stickers on their cars for obvious reasons. They don't want their car keyed. But in the 2020 elections, they're going to come out in the millions and millions to reelect Donald Trump.
Do you think that Democrats will come out for Donald Trump? I hear that twice the number of African Americans are going to vote for him, twice the number of Hispanics. He's going to get bigger, much bigger numbers, which is why this constant drumbeat of racist. He's a racist. Yeah. I mean, here's a guy with a hit TV show for a dozen years on NBC. I didn't know they had a racist working for NBC.
Yeah, and that's the only term they can use, and I think we're all tired of it, when in reality it's reverse racism. They're practicing racism themselves. It's a propaganda term, and I think Americans need to take that and just push it right back in their faces. Those racist claims are a power grab. They're lies. They're incorrect, and we know many of them are hoaxes. We need to stop accepting, and politicians especially, and Republicans especially, need to stop cowering at the threat that they're a racist or they're going to be hit with an EEO suit, sexual harassment, whatever. Stop being afraid of these lawsuits and fight back, which is starting to happen. People are fighting back, and they're standing up against these false accusations of racism, which have gotten sickening and absolutely ridiculous.
Kevin Shipp, he is the author of this book, From the Company of Shadows, a bestseller on Amazon a couple of different times, he tells me. It's a fabulous book. It's everything you want to know. You get your money's worth from it. It's on the front page of his website, fortheloveoffreedom.net. Also, Kevin Shipp, you've paid a lot for this. You put up a donation page. You have a Patreon page. You have a GoFundMe site. You have a snail mail address. It's right in the middle of the your website. Most of that stuff right in the middle of your website. You can't miss it. You need to be supported. And you also have this Patreon coming up on August 1st. Is it going to be a live stream and then put out on YouTube?
Yes, on patreon.com/Kevin_Shipp, we do programs that you're not going to see anywhere else. And we put it on Patreon as a firewall against YouTube, who's been messing with. I've got almost 2 million views on some of these videos, and they've pulled those figures off and actually deleted some of the thumbnails. Twitter has deleted some of my tweets. So we went to Patreon because it's a wall against these algorithms and the trolls. And not only that, Patreon basically is important to our family's financial survival, because, as you know, I lost my retirement when I came out and blew the whistle on the CIA, and my kids lost their college funds. So this stuff is important to me, and I get the most wonderful letters from people that are supporting us and standing up against this corruption, and that's why we got into Patreon.
Well, you also got a snail mail address, which is probably can help you out too. Some people may not want to use the electronic services; they may want to do it covertly. Anyway, so listen. So I'll put up all the links for theloveoffreedom.net. Also, you have something new on the website that you have Shipp's Notes. And every day, 7 days a week, you have a little note about, hey, here's what's going on. This is what happened, and every day it's pretty insightful. It's pretty interesting. Very very interesting to see your brain on parade.
Yeah,
I like that. It gives people a reason to come back to your website every day. So, Kevin Shipp, the author of this book, From the Company of Shadows, it's a bestseller, still on sale on the website. You have your Patreon account. I'll put up those links for theloveoffreedom.net, Shipp's Notes. You can go there every day. Kevin Shipp, I'm sorry we couldn't do this in your full video regalia, but it was a beautiful frozen shot. You looked fabulous the whole time with a nice smile on your face. Kevin Shipp, thank you for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Greg, it is always a privilege to be on with you.